It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. In 8 coordinated suicide attacks in central Sri Lanka, 321 people have been killed, and that toll is rising, with more than 500 people injured. The attacks took place in several locations in Colombo, Negombo, Dehiwala, and Batiklo. The bombs were placed in 3 churches, 3 hotels, and 1 housing complex. No organization has taken responsibility for the attacks, but Sri Lankan authorities have announced that the organization, National Tawhid Jamaat, is suspected of orchestrating these attacks, and they are religiously motivated because many of these attacks were against churches on Easter Sunday. 40 suspects have been apprehended, but it is still unclear who's really responsible for these attacks. International intelligence organizations have criticized Sri Lankan security apparatus, claiming that they were pre-warned that such attacks may occur and that they didn't take proper precautions or security measures. Now, Sudesh Cologne is a survivor of the attacks. He lost his wife and child in the attacks.
I went with my daughter and wife, and I also inside the church at that time. And it's the end of the ceremony, and I just walk outside. And in 5 minutes time, there's a bomb blast. I heard about a huge noise. Then I jumped into the church, and I saw that my daughter and my wife was on the floor. I don't know what to do. And I was just saw my daughter on the floor, and I tried to lift her up. It's already exactly the same. Next, my wife is there. That's the end of the story. My daughter, wife.
On to make sense of these attacks, with me today is Sunanda Deshapriya. He is a Sri Lankan journalist and former editor of Yuktiya newspaper. He is a founding member of the Movement for Interracial Justice and Equality in Sri Lanka. He is also a member of the Editors Guild. Sunanda, good to have you here, and my condolences to our country and all of those who were affected by these horrific tragedies. Anyway, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
Sunanda, there are many questions pending. Let's begin with what we know about the attackers, who were responsible, and what were their objectives in doing this?
We exactly don't know which organization is responsible, but now the CCTV footage and other evidence has pointed towards a small Islamic group in Sri Lanka who has been in Sri Lanka for a long time. This is not just a new organization. They have been there since 2017. And there are evidence now, people from Katankudi area, where this is stronghold of this Jamaat Tawfiq organization, has been complained to the UN government about their violent behaviors. So nobody took interest about that growing this militancy among the Muslim youth. One has to understand that radicalization of Muslim youth happened within the Sri Lanka because of the injustice that Muslim community face in Sri Lanka. There's a total impunity in Sri Lanka against all the attack against the minorities. Muslim people have faced number of gang violence, but nobody has been convicted. Nothing has happened. They have not had any justice on these issues. So that's the context of radicalization of Muslim youth in the country. But this kind of violent suicide bombing cannot happen without international or some outside coordination, because no group in Sri Lanka has this capacity to do eight bombs suicide bombs. Most of them now say 7 of them have suicide bombs. There are CCTV footage to show that bombers going into the churches. So this is really a well coordinated with a command, strong command and commitment and fanatic commitment to do the destruction. So this cannot happen only because of the Sri Lankan situation. I think there must be definitely international extremist ideology, and organizations must have had some connections with this.
Now, National Tawhid Jamaat, as you say, Sunanda, has some sort of international support to be able to carry out these kinds of coordinated attack with the kinds of bombs that were used. This requires certain sophistication, and you also say that international security or intelligence services had prior knowledge of this, and they were notified. The police chief in Colombo were notified. Now, can you tell us, first of all, who are the international bodies that you think are involved in training, development, and funding National Tawhid Jamaat, and why these kinds of escalated attacks and training would even be undertaken in a place like Sri Lanka?
And it's very difficult to pinpoint who really was international connections, who gave them the training. But definitely we all know that there's Islamic, international Islamic organizations that train people to attack other faiths and other countries. So they must have some kind of contacts with them. But on the other hand, we need to understand also, Sri Lanka has 30 years of war, and from 1970 we had 3 major armed struggles. So making bombs and using arms is part of the culture, political culture in Sri Lanka still. And so anyone who really have some understanding of the how these things done, how to make a bomb and how to explode them, there are so many information within the country. I suppose you can easily find the material also to make this kind of very dangerous explosive bombs in the country because of our past situation, the war situations we had in Sri Lanka. So
Sunanda,
yeah.
One unique element about these attacks is that it was orchestrated, as far as we know, by a Muslim group with international connections, but they attacked Christians, mostly churches, and a few hotels, of course, but the churches have never been targeted in any attacks in Sri Lanka. So in that sense, it is very unique. So what are the ethnic dimensions here in terms of the Tamils, who are also Christians, and why target the churches specifically?
Targeting churches cannot be only a local reason, because there's any conflicts between the Muslim community and the Christian community in the country. Christian community has been very neutral during the war, as well as in the ongoing sporadic attacks against Muslim mosques in the country. So that in that sense, I think this is the international dimension, and it is a message, it is an attack against the West, because Christianity came from the West. But on the other hand, you see that in particular predominantly Tamil area also targeted, and they are almost everyone who died in the Tamils. It is a combination of local and international situation. They want to send a message to Tamil people as well about, I think, that's why they targeted some particular churches.
Sunanda, there's been a great deal of political conflict leading up to these attacks in Sri Lanka, mainly between the president's office and the prime minister's office, involving parliament and overthrow of the prime minister, then a reinstatement of the prime minister. And then we also learned after these attacks that the chief of police in Sri Lanka had been notified by foreign intelligence, mainly Indian intelligence services, that there will be some attacks on churches and the Indian embassy and perhaps some hotels. Now, they had prior knowledge and they were warned, but the police chief, besides notifying the government, apparently, didn't take any action of his own in order to prevent these attacks. So what's going on politically here?
As you said, there's a conflict between the very clearly, strong conflict between the president and the prime minister. They don't see eye to eye on any issues in the country today. And police comes under the president. Police should have been under the prime minister or other minister, but president has taken over the police department also after the October constitutional coup. When this news came from 4th April and 11th April, the memo was sent to the security divisions, but this memo was not sent to the Prime Minister's security division. Even when the bombs attacks took place, the Prime Minister tried to convey the Security Council, all the Security Council like a Navy, Army, Air Force, and police commanders refused to come to Prime Minister's office, and he has to go to the Defense Ministry to meet them. So we can see that kind of anarchic situation in that sense, even after such a tragedy has taken place. Our political leaders are not trying to come together. Even today, parliament sessions took place, and what we saw is that political parties trying to blame each other. There's no unity to face this situation and see that how we are going forward in this situation. Politically, we are very divided. We have to keep in mind that this is going to be election year. So every political party will try to score points on this tragedy. That's the most unfortunate situation of this, what is happening in the country today.
And Sunanda, a bit more context in terms of what is happening between the Prime Minister's office and the President's office. Now, we had learned that the President was actually out of the country while these attacks took place. Why is there such a rift between these two offices?
There are a few reasons. One is that the president is more coming from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, which is more towards nationalistic and social welfare-oriented policies. And Prime Minister is has neoliberal policies, and the Prime Minister comes from the Western background, while the President comes from a real village background. There are a personality conflict as well as a policy conflict, and they came together only to defeat the Rajapaksa regime, which has been running the country from 2005 to 2015. But after that, I think two of them could not see the policy-wise, they could not agree to each other, and these personality conflicts came together. That's how this October the constitutional coup took place, and then President has to take back because Supreme Court decided that he cannot dissolve the government or he cannot appoint another prime minister. I think this has become very bitter. Relations are very bitter between two of them. Every time presidents go to public meetings, he's tried to attack the prime minister, but prime minister has been trying to be not very trying to be conciliatory and trying to work within the president, but president has not really given in. He has his own plans. In Sri Lanka, we have seen, as I said, that we have seen so many deaths and wars and everything. And all these years, what we have seen is no political unity, no national unity in the face of tragedies in our country. That's what is happening now also.
All right, Sunanda, I will leave it there for now. But obviously, there needs to be so much more discussion about what's going on politically, the upcoming elections, and of course, follow up on who actually orchestrated these attacks and the tragedy that the country is facing. I thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us here on the Real News Network.